Good morning, I'm Rowena Crosby.
And I'm Deborah Rinner, and we're your co-hosts for this show. Thank you for joining us for the next 17 minutes for your Invisible Toolbox, the show sponsored by Tero International that's focusing on the book that Row and I co-authored, and each week we look at a tool for working more effectively with others.
We do, and we also need to know that there's never been a time in history where technical skills have probably been more important.
But as significant as technical skills are, it's really the soft skills or the people skills that are going to make the difference in terms of our customer experience. And today we're going to examine how both individuals and businesses can leverage a competitive advantage with good customer service.
And the idea of treating people well in business is nothing new to us at Tero. One of the statistics we love to quote is a research study, actually 3 research studies, Harvard University, the Stanford Research Institute, and the Carnegie Foundation, all found that 85% of our professional success is related to our people skills, 15% to our technical abilities.
And that is such an important finding because it's estimated that over $64 billion per year is lost due to poor customer service. And when they estimated 2,000 adults in the U.S. and they said, have you switched to a different provider or a different service as a result of poor customer service, 49% said that they had, and 67% of those actually said they've done that more than once.
And that's easy to believe. And the reasons people are switching because of poor customer service, get a load of some of these cited reasons. Customers feeling unappreciated, encountering unhelpful or rude staff, being redirected to multiple agents, we've all had that happen, not able to get answers to their questions, and being put on hold for too long.
Oh, it's happened to everyone. And
absolutely.
The implications are so obvious. If we don't treat our customers well, if they don't have a good experience with us, they actually will leave us for our competitors. And so today's show is going to examine what does good customer service look like.
And when we take a look at our Invisible Tool of the Week, we're going to talk about how do you treat others well, because after all, businesses don't do business with businesses. People do business with people.
In our development challenge, we're going to take a look at some tips on improving personal customer service.
And we're very excited. Later in the show, we're going to welcome to our table in the Ask the Expert segment, Jessica Dunker, and she's the CEO and Executive Director of the Iowa Restaurant Association. Wow, what a great opportunity to talk about customer service that's going to be.
It will be. And if you're following along in the book, we're in chapter 26. You have your choice of airlines. And if you don't have your own copy of your Invisible Toolbox, scroll down, click the link below, get your copy so you can follow along in future shows. Let's get started.
Now, virtually every industry is struggling with shrinking margins, with intense competition. One of the ones we know, and the chapter in the book is very much around this, is the airline industry. And building customer relationships is really critical across all industries.
Well, and imagine that you're aboard a flight to a destination you've been to several times. The pilot comes across the intercom and says that you're at 30,000 feet. You're going to arrive to your destination in 2 hours. At that point, in that seat with your seatbelt on, you don't have much choice but to trust that pilot, even though you don't know him and you've only heard him say a few sentences.
Exactly.
Initially, though, when we make our decisions for airlines, it's usually based on our budget or the flight schedule. And yet, how do we make our final decision? I know how I make mine. I think you make yours that way too. Which airline is going to treat us the best?
Yeah, when we narrow the choices down to just a couple, that's how we choose. And how do we decide if we're going to be treated well? Well, a lot of it has to do with the perception that's out there, and we know that airlines actually are laboring under some bad perceptions right now. In most industries, the process, the technical capabilities, those are fairly easy to copy. Competitive advantage really comes from how people are treated.
It does. And so what do customers want when it comes to customer service? Well, bottom line is people want to be treated like people, not like an account number.
Yeah, how about that? Well, in a recent article in Forbes magazine, the author Leonard Berry suggests some steps we can take if we want our customers to see us as reliable and fair. One step, he says, is, of course, try to anticipate the problems and solve them before they touch the customer. And if the problem does hit the customer, and I love the way he says this, honor the customer's perceived contract instead of the legal contract.
That's an important point. Now,
It is.
He argues that the company can make a customer sign a legally binding terms and conditions contract, but if they try to enforce that in light of bad service, that is going to be something that's not well received by the customer and actually will endanger the relationship. And so success lies not in the contracts that we have, but in the customer's perception and in their experience. So this leads us to our invisible tool this week.
It does, and we've all signed those contracts, those really long ones with the teeny print, and actually that even creates a negative perception, doesn't it, as a customer? Well, it is time to look at our invisible tool of the week. Our invisible tool this week, if you're following along in the book, you're going to find on page 64. The chapter is entitled You Have a Choice of Airlines, and the tool itself is to enrich the personal experience.
And even when transactions are conducted business to business and not business to customer, it's important that we remember that people are always at the center of business. And when we do treat our customers like numbers instead of people, the odds are good that they will leave us and do business with someone else. And so when they leave, they can spread the word of that bad experience to potential customers.
Yeah, and spreading the word is bad, and it's also very costly. All of our friends in the marketing world tell us it costs 5 times more to be able to bring on a new customer than just to simply satisfy an existing one.
So what does enriching the customer's experience look like? Well, some things we can do is call customers by name. They are people. Call them by name. Try to develop some rapport, break the ice in situations. These things go a long way in creating that experience for the customer.
Well, and as we teach at Tero, so much of it is even nonverbal. Making eye contact and smiling can make a big difference. So if we can use that invisible tool of enriching the customer's experience by treating them well, it can really matter to our businesses. Well, it is time for our development challenge of the week, and for this week, our development challenge, we're going to challenge you to challenge yourself and try something new involving interpersonal skills as they relate to customer service.
And we're going to take some ideas from Eric Schiffler. He's a CEO of a large digital marketing company. And first, what Eric does, and he has shared, is that you have to call customers by the right term. He calls his customers guests, and he actually calls the company representatives the hosts. And that changes things just in how people are labeled and how they address each other.
Perception.
We can also anticipate the needs of the customer, just like a good waiter knows exactly when to bring the check. If we can anticipate problems the customer might endure, if we can anticipate those ahead of time, then we can take care of them before they even arise.
And that's so important. The other thing that's important is courtesy. It costs nothing to be courteous. It can cost everything to be rude. Sam Walton, you'll remember him as the founder of Walmart, once said, treat everyone as if they're a VIP. And one of his very famous sayings, we love this, there's only one boss, the customer. He can fire everyone from the chairman on down simply by spending his money elsewhere.
Oh, that's so true.
It is.
And mistakes do happen, but when mistakes happen, rather than focusing on blame, focusing on working that out and taking some action is what's really important, because sometimes things don't work out, but we don't want to be blaming or we don't want to be excusing that. We just want to take action and make it right.
And when we do make it right, people understand mistakes happen, and customers who have their issues resolved are apparently tell 4 to 6 people, and that can be very good for our brands. So treat people as human beings and not just as those numbers.
This week we're going to challenge you in our development challenge to analyze your own customer experience, the one you have when you're a customer of someone else. What matters to you? And then ask yourself, are you doing something similar in your own business, or could you? And then take a look at what are the top 3 things that you could implement this week, analyze how they might work in order to enrich your customer's experience.
Because that experience is your company brand, and we need to know how customers feel about their experience. And our social media posts this week really exemplify that.
They do. Now it's time to take a look at our social media posts for this week.
And those of you that follow us on social media already know Tero posts useful links and content several times every day. We're going to feature 2 of those posts right now.
And our first post is an article from Entrepreneurs Magazine, and it's called 5 Strategies for Making Your Customers Trust Your Brand. And the author argues of the importance of not only being consistent in your messaging, but of the need to understand your buyers' personalities and deliver on the promises you make over time. This is going to be on all Tero social media platforms today.
And then our second featured post is actually a video produced by the Harvard Business Review, and it profiles the different types of customer service representatives and which ones work. So we encourage you to watch that. That'll be on all Tero social media platforms on Wednesday. Well, now it is time for our Ask the Expert segment, and we are so excited to welcome to our table Jessica Dunker. Jessica is the Executive Director and CEO of the Iowa Restaurant Association. Oh, it's hard to imagine another industry than restaurants that depends so heavily on customer service. So we're so delighted to welcome you to our table, Jessica. Thank you for being here.
Welcome. Thank you so much. Before we get started, could you tell our viewers a little bit about your career path and your responsibilities as CEO of the Iowa Restaurant Association?
The Iowa Restaurant Association is an organization that is about the business of restaurants. So we're looking at advocacy, promotion, protection, and ways that we can educate our industry, customer service being one of those key areas.
Oh, well, could you tell us about the state of your industry, particularly as it applies to the growth of the independent restaurant, which there are a lot of these days,
Yes.
versus the chain restaurant?
Absolutely. Iowa's restaurant industry has been on a very slow and steady path. It's been about 3% a year every year since 2009, which was a difficult year across the country.
For everyone.
We don't seem to have the huge jumps and fits and starts in growth that some states do because we're not dependent on tourism. We really just kind of move along, and as goes our state economy, goes the restaurant industry. One of the things that we have found about our industry is that even in difficult times, people still go to restaurants. They still use restaurants. They just order and use restaurants differently. And this is where customer service comes in to play a really key role. And how is it that you delight people to keep them coming back? Because in difficult times, they do still come back.
Oh, that's interesting.
Very interesting. You know, it would seem that the chain restaurants are successful because diners kind of know what to expect from
Right.
the chain, and independent restaurants don't really have that advantage. So how do they create that kind of experience for the customers?
Well, experience is the key word to that question. Our research shows that 61% of people would prefer to spend their money on an experience such as a restaurant than on an item, something that they could own.
Oh, that's interesting.
And
That's
so
interesting.
creating an experience is absolutely critical, particularly for the independent restaurant. You've also seen an increase in interest in food with the growth of the Food Network. And so people are willing to explore and do interesting things. They're willing to try new food experiences. So one of the things that independent restaurants are doing is varying those menus. They're doing interesting things. They're focusing on local, and they are creating a situation where you as the customer know who is the owner, who is the chef. They're putting a person rather than a product at the center of much of that customer experience.
Wow, that really would be a competitive advantage.
Would be, Jessica. It's very interesting, isn't it? I never thought of the correlation of the Food Network and people trying new things and wanting different experiences.
Yes.
We are all about interpersonal skills here at Tero,
Yes.
and I know that in the restaurant industry, interpersonal skills are a very important factor with regards to the relationship to the customer. Can you speak to that?
I can, and in fact, I also like to use a Harvard business study. The big restaurants, the large chains, are the ones who have the ability to really be studied versus an independent restaurant. But one of the most interesting statistics that I've seen is actually from the Harvard Business School study, which looked at Starbucks. And in a restaurant like Starbucks, or any restaurant really, if you can get a customer to come back one more time during the month, the level of profitability for your business is tremendous. So when they were looking at customer satisfaction, a satisfied customer would come 4.3 times per month, and they would spend about $4 each time, and they would be a customer for approximately 4 years. That sounds like pretty good statistics.
Sounds like pretty good
Yes.
statistics. That's about once a week.
Right, but if someone is a highly satisfied customer, they will come back an average of 7 times per month, and they will spend slightly more at $4.42,
That adds up.
and they will be a customer for 8 years.
Goodness.
So when you look at
Wow.
how important is taking someone over the the goal line from satisfied to highly satisfied in our business, where we need people to come back once a month or twice a month, and not just come once a year for the experience. That customer satisfaction piece, which is all about personal relationship, is extremely critical.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That is fascinating.
It is. So I get my recommendations from other people. I
Yep.
imagine you do
Yes,
too,
we do.
Ro. And so how important is word of mouth? Because I will try someplace someone
Sure.
has said to go to.
Sure. Part of that is age dependent. And I'm serious about that. And we are at an interesting juncture in the restaurant industry in that if you're a baby boomer or older, word of mouth is still number one.
Okay.
That's
That
still
makes
number
sense.
one.
Yeah.
But those millennials, right, and the folks born after the millennials, the first place they go is technology.
Online.
And so we've had to stop and think about, how is technology word of mouth? Because really in our business, word of mouth is coming in multiple forms these
It
days.
is. Well, and
So-
people getting the
makes
word of
sense.
mouth from strangers
Yes.
through technology.
Yes,
They're looking
yes.
at the...
And so you have to be on your toes and delighting all the time. And so much of what you were sharing is absolutely at the heart of our business. You need an experience. You are a guest. Welcome to essentially my home if you were in the restaurant industry.
Wow.
Oh. Final words of advice. Somebody wants to open a restaurant. What are your
Yes.
words of advice for them?
There are actually two. One is that a great restaurateur is a great business person first. You can actually hire someone to help you build a great menu. And so many people think, if I am a great chef, I will be a great restaurateur. Not true. The business skills are absolutely most important, most critical to success. The second is the customer is not always right, but the customer always has to win. And so in an industry where people perhaps have something that's slower than they like or isn't quite what they wanted, you have to over deliver on the win, even if you don't acknowledge that they're right. And if you approach things in that way all of the time, you can be successful in our industry.
Wow, that's terrific advice for people in
It is.
every industry.
industry.
How many times does the technician open the business and then find out the business skills? Well, thank you so much for being
you.
here. This was very insightful. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. If you missed any portion of the program or would like to share it with others, you'll find the entire program on Tero's YouTube channel. Tune in again next Monday morning at 9:03 Central Time, where we will explore another tool in your Invisible Toolbox.
And we welcome your feedback and suggestions for future shows. Email your ideas to ideas@yourinvisibletooolbox.com. Find us out there on your favorite social media platform. And if you have read the book, go out to Amazon and review it. We like those reviews as well. They're very important.
People like to see them.
So we
Yes.
invite you to do that. And a thank you to Kyle Plummer, our marketing and director of marketing, and Rachel Trainham, who's doing our filming today.
And thanks to all of you. And that's a wrap.